Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the webinar on Kubernetes pen testing. Before we begin, I would just on behalf of Secular A7, I extend my deep welcome to you all to attend this particular webinar. So before we begin, I would just like to give you a short intro about Secular A7 as well as about me. Moving on, Secular A7 is a cybersecurity company where we actually provide security consultant services globally in many type of industries such as technologies, health, finance, energy, and automobiles. So, what kind of services do Secular A7 provide? We actually provide a web application penetration testing and vulnerability assessment, network penetration testing, as well as mobile, both in Android and iOS, and source code analysis, cloud application security testing, and mainly the major topic Kubernetes vulnerability assessment and penetration testing, IoT, as well as red team assessments. So, and yes, of course, we do a lot more than this. And this is a short gist of Secular A7. And yes, we will actually proceed to a short introduction about me too. Once again, I'm Dhyanesh Shilvaraj. I have been actually working as security consultant in Secular A7 for more than 1.5 years. And yes, I have actually worked on like 200 plus security assessments at Secular A7 as well as in other companies combinedly. So I'm basically a cybersecurity enthusiast and as well as performing few researches in cybersecurity fields also. I'm an OSCP Offensive Security Certified Professional, Certified Red Team Professional, and Certified Ethical Hacker. So the area of expertise, the area which I'm specifically expertise is Kubernetes, Docker, thick client, mobile, web application, network, and majorly the main part of expertise is red team assessments. And of course, yes, I do pen test on IoT, source code analysis, and a lot more. So I guess we shall begin with the webinar topics. This will be the agenda for today. Before we begin, I would really appreciate you guys to text me on the chat box for any doubts you face. Once after this presentation gets over, I will actually look into the chat box and I will actually try to answer all your queries. Okay, thank you. So introduction on Kubernetes is what we're going to see first, and then what is actually the Kubernetes is and why actually people are using Kubernetes, the way we'll be seeing that. And before we get into the pen testing process, I would really like to show you guys the components or the structure of Kubernetes, like how the Kubernetes is actually architectured, so that you guys could get some clear understanding of how a penetration process and a Kubernetes will work. And then, yes, of course, the main heart of the webinar, penetration testing on Kubernetes. I have actually categorized these attacks as external attacker enumeration process, and then the major part is RBAC configuration. And after that, once we get the Kubernetes cluster, what are the steps we can do inside an Kubernetes attack. And then also, finally, we will move on with the tools which a Kubernetes pen tester should really know. So we begin with an introduction of Kubernetes. So it was actually it was actually founded by Google, and the term Kubernetes was actually originated from a Greek language, which means pilot. No, so it is obviously, guys, Kubernetes is an orchestration tool. So it was actually found from the word pilot. And it is actually an open source platform. You don't have to pay any cost for it. It is majorly used to manage the containerized workloads, containers and stuffs like that. So it is nothing but is simply managing the cluster of you can call it as the Linux clusters. It's just managing the Linux clusters. So these tools they are widely famous, and so that it is actually easily available and they are widely damn famous. And it actually eliminates the number of manual process while you are if you want to increase the number of containers which you are using, which depends upon the loads, which is called as a scaling process of containers. These things actually can be managed by Kubernetes. So that is why they actually prefer Kubernetes. So this Kubernetes was found in a container deployment era, which is there were actually two different eras before. One was like a physical deployment era where an actual server or an actual a physical device is used to install anything. Like it can be database stuff or a web application or a server or anything, you just need to install it in a physical server, separate physical hardware. And then that came on, then it came on what do you call a virtual deployment. Those you know it as those VMs. That too, you actually have to create virtual memory, virtual storage, and everything. So that too actually needed a lot of space, a lot of memory for those particular images to run in the virtual deployment era. And then came the container deployment era, in which they formed a containers which actually shared the memory and storage of the host, so making it so small, so light, so that it works in an extreme speed, so you will not find any issues with these containers. So Kubernetes was actually introduced in that particular container deployment era. So that must be something for a tool or a service to be used, right? So actually Kubernetes has some good services that makes it special for it to be used in the containerized applications. So the first service which I want you guys to know is it's a service discovery and load balancing service. So it is like whenever you set up Kubernetes, it actually has every DNS names are set to each and every components which is inside it, and then we can actually expose those containers or those components to the outside world, and using that a person from outside the Kubernetes cluster can able to access those details which is inside the Kubernetes cluster, and that makes a service discovered, and that is one of the main service. And also the load balancing which Kubernetes uses is awesome. It actually manages the loads depending upon how the rules you have set. It manages, like if a container reaches a number of maximum users or the traffic is a bit high, it actually creates or redirect the traffic to another another container. So these are the first two services which I want to talk. And then the storage orchestration is like you could mount whatever the storage system you want to mount in the container. For example, you can mount your local storage, or there are a lot of cloud storage, like consider Amazon, which has elastic block storage, EBS, or even on those kind of storage, external storage also you can mount it, or else you could also mount a local storage. And the next thing I just really want to tell you is it actually performs automated rollouts and rollbacks. So consider if something happens to your container, you should actually describe a desired state, like what this particular Kubernetes this container should do when it reaches the desired state. You can, for example, if you want to just create a new container automatically, you could just put up a desired state, and automatically when it reaches that state, the container will actually create a new container, copy the entire contents from the container to a new container, and it will delete the container. So this one we can actually set it. So this is called as automated rollouts and rollbacks. And then I want to talk to you about this automatic bin packing. So it's nothing but it actually sets the number of memory, CPU, and how much a container needs in terms of a CPU and memory. So it manages that stuff also. And self-healing is if something happens to a container while during work time, if something happens and something crashes or something, you're not getting a proper connection to the outside world, what it does is it tries to automatically restarts that particular container, or else what it does is it creates a copy of it and it directly replaces that container if that particular container doesn't work at all, it actually kills that container. So this particular thing has that service also. Secrets and configuration management, you could actually use them to store it into your Kubernetes, and we can actually manage whenever a new container image is created, we can just directly use those as secrets. So it's not a big task to again create a configuration file, secrets and stuff. So it's made so easy with Kubernetes. Before we proceed with this Kubernetes pen testing, I would just like to show you the architecture of Kubernetes cluster and where are the stuffs placed, so that how an attacker can come into Kubernetes cluster. So right, actually the thing on this left hand side of this image, control plane, this is called as a master node. A main Kubernetes cluster will have a master node and a slave working nodes or a slave nodes. Mostly they call it the working nodes. So this master node, it is like a heart of a Kubernetes cluster, and this it has an API server and an etcd. I will actually explain you what are those stuffs. It actually has an API server, etcd, and scheduler, and control manager, cloud control manager. So these forms the heart of the Kubernetes. If a master node actually fails, it has a capacity to jump into a worker node and to make it as a master node. So that compatibility is also present in Kubernetes. Now, considering this architecture, this entire stuff is called as Kubernetes cluster, and below it, we will be having a control plane which is called as a master node, and all these nodes, node, and 3 nodes will be calling as a separate worker nodes. When each particular worker node will be having a kubelet and a kproxy kube proxy. So what this kubelet will do is it actually will check whether this particular node, and one more thing, every node will be having a pod to manage all these containers, and this kubelet will check whether all the pods inside the node are having the container inside them, or it is just an empty pod. They keep on checking particular thing, like whether any container is in a pod or the container is empty. The pod is empty. So they keep on checking this service. What is the use of kproxy kube proxy is, it actually this is necessary for communication between the internal components of a Kubernetes, as well as the communication between the the particular container with the World Wide Web, that is to the internet. So this is actually required for a communication purpose, change of information. And moving on to the master node, which is called as control plane, we have the main API server, and all the API calls, major calls, or from the worker node comes via this API server. So, and we have the scheduler. What scheduler does is it actually is responsible for building the new node, new worker node, and the working of all those new nodes. So actually scheduler is responsible for that. And etcd is actually a storage block where it stores a number of files, and it acts like you can call it as a backup store. If you're but you have to mainly note that if your particular container is actually linked with the etcd to store some stuff, it is always recommended that you back up those data in a separate file also. So it is actually used for those things. And API has all those secrets. It has all those informations, mainly what are the pods created, and how many namespaces are in there in the cluster. N number of informations can be found in the API server. And CM it is actually a control manager, which actually controls how does what to do with the particular container or pod or node. So it actually controls. It's like a kind of controlling the entire work nodes. And CCM is similar to CM, but it's related to the activities which is performed on cloud. So it's called as a cloud control manager, and it does stuffs with those cloud related stuffs. So yes, so then we will actually move to the heart of the presentation. Actually, as I said, every penetration testing in any technology needs an enumeration process. So we can actually consider this particular whatever I'm going to say now as an enumeration process of Kubernetes pen testing, which is the start of Kubernetes pen testing. So the external attack enumeration process, we begin with services available via Kubernetes. We actually should check for an exposed service which a Kubernetes uses. So there may be a high chance of an actually Kubernetes must have a lot of web applications or other services which are running, and this has to be exposed. Not necessarily, but somehow by misconfiguration, if any of the services other than needed one, like web application, other than those things can be exposed by an error of an administrator who actually does it. So there are high chances of such services which are directly exposed to the outer world, and that is the first stage we should actually try to do it, is to find what are the services that are actually available. For example, as I mentioned in the next step, is the subdomain enumeration. Each and every Kubernetes component will have this FQT in. So if you are actually trying to expose a particular pod which consider it as a web application hosted, and you are trying to expose that pod to the outer world, So yeah, that pod will actually have a FQTN set, and what we can do is we can actually perform subdomain enumeration using a CRT.sh. So if you go to that website and if you just consider a SQLA7.NET domain, and you can actually perform a filter with K8s. So K8s, it's like everything which comes under Kubernetes domains. So by that thing, you could also try to get those details, and further on you can find the IP of it, and further you can proceed with the further pen testing process. So as I said, this is just an enumeration process, and also GitHub search. Nowadays, GitHubs are becoming actually more vulnerable as everyone in the company used to share codes in GitHubs. So if anyone actually tries to a developer or whoever is controlling the Kubernetes cluster tries to push all those codes in the GitHub. For example, there is a config file used for Kubernetes YAML files. So when these YAML files are published in the GitHub, it could actually leak a lot of sensitive information, and it is something victim or an attacker can use it to further perform penetration testing attacks. And also the next thing is port scanning. Is obvious. If we could get something like there's a subdomain enumeration process, and if we found anything which is related to Kubernetes, and if we are able to get the IPs, for example, the master class, the master node has a particular IP. If we were able to get that particular IP, and if it is exposed to the outer world, then yes, first thing we have to do is the port scanning. We have to perform the port scanning, entire port scanning, like what are the open ports which is available in the port scanning, and then yes, each and every port has a unique attack available. Like there are port numbers to access the etcd files, and there are port numbers to access the scheduler. There are port numbers to access API server. So there are a number of port numbers, and with finding those port numbers, we can able to proceed further. And also gathering information about the ports, as I said, like during the subdomain enumeration or any exposed service in the web application, you could actually also enumerate what are the what is actually a pod made up of, like whether what kind of server it is, and what is the version of that server, or what else the web application actually is using in that particular server or ports. So these are some basic information that needs to be collected before entering the attacks. So moving on to the next one is it is actually some important topic which I guess you have to understand in order to proceed with the further penetration testing of Kubernetes. So RBAC configuration is nothing but it is a role-based authentication access control. It's a role-based access control. Kubernetes uses this configuration to secure the Kubernetes cluster in a high level. You can call it like that. But first I would just tell what happens when an RBAC configuration is set. Actually, if the RBAC configuration of a particular user is set to just only read files and pods, these are actually managed by resources and verbs. There are two components in a YAML file where one can actually, either the administrator who actually creates a RBAC configuration for a user. Consider if Dhyanesh is trying to access something. But before that, the particular administrator will actually create an RBAC configuration file for Dhyanesh, and he will actually tell in the resource that he should actually able to read only stuff from this pod, and he has no other access. So he will only mention that particular thing in the resource. I'm sorry, I have forgot to create the show you the YAML structure file. So that particular YAML file has a resource you can mention there, and also another verb, like what if Dhyanesh gives particular commands, if he gives only this particular command, he could actually able to access this, otherwise he will not be able to access. So this is a kind of an RBAC configuration. And also RBAC, it actually works in a cluster format. Like for a particular cluster, you could actually set it is also possible to set the roles for the entire cluster in a single RBAC configuration file. So this is how an actual RBAC works. A client or a user requests a particular service which is inside the Kubernetes cluster. cluster, but the RBAC files actually RBAC config file which actually check whether this particular user is he has a rights to access it, and then he will actually proceed if it's present. It would actually redirect the request to the particular service, or else just throw a forbidden error. How do we actually attack with this particular RBAC configuration files? So as I was telling, there are each and every access that can be made inside the Kubernetes cluster. So first we have to check whether whatever user an attacker is, in an attacker perspective, what he will do is like he will be checking whether he has a pod creation access which is inside the cluster. Actually, there will be n number of namespaces inside a cluster. So and each namespace will have n number of pods inside it. So it will be like a cluster, and inside a cluster there will be a master node, and then worker nodes which all will be placed in a namespace. Each namespace will be having n number of pods. So first of all, the particular attacker will have to check whether he has an ability or he has an access to create a pod inside that particular namespace. So why we have to do this is, while actually if he can create a pod, he can actually mount a host file system, that is in order to access the Dockers. These Kubernetes actually they are used to manage the containerized applications, right? All these containers are managed by Dockers, and simply if you just create a pod and if you access a system which is or a container which consists of a Linux image, you can't just try to access a Dockers. So the only thing which you can do is, like as I said, it is a user is allowed to mount his local system also. So what we will do is we will actually try to mount the host system where we will be having the Docker access. So with that further enumeration, we can list the entire pods which is inside the pods and containers which is inside that particular namespace. And so that is the first RBAC check we have to perform. And the next one is like checking access for reading the secrets. So here secrets are nothing but each and every service or each and every pods which you create will have a service. For example, there are some huge number of services which is inside the Kubernetes, like Prometheus and a kube system. If you try to compromise kube system, then it's a game over. You have totally compromised the Kubernetes cluster. So there will be such number of services which is inside the Kubernetes cluster, and each services and each pods which you create. The pods which I'm talking here is nothing but it's just an instance with either a server or anything which is running as a container. So every container or every pod will be having a secret, and those secret actually we can use it, and we can use it with the I will show you a curl command later, how we can actually use a curl command to fetch informations from the master API. So we can use those secrets to actually use it in a curl command and retrieve any other informations of other pods in other namespaces. But the secret which you have retrieved should have that particular privileged access. So the next step will be, like as I have mentioned, checking access for reading secrets. You should actually search for each and every privileged secrets in whatever pods you are able to list it from the above step. So if you were able to get the kube system's secret, then you could directly cause a kube system is something which is which has a direct access with the API server from the master node. So if you just get the kube systems secret, you could actually retrieve the entire information in the Kubernetes cluster. So it's a game over. So we have to check for that, and then we have to check for access for resources and verbs. And as I told you, there will be a stuff for creating a permission for a user, like resources and verbs. So we have to check for this particular pod, what permission do I actually have, like in the resources do I have the if we have mentioned star, then it means like I will be able to write, tell it, update and everything, every type of performance which I can make it on that particular pod. So it is also necessary that you do actually check for this particular resource and verbs. So it is a normal misconfiguration made in the config files. And also we also should try to create a deployment or update a deployment. And here deployment means nothing like it is like you can call a set of rules, this also comes in a config file with a particular header called deployment. What it will actually do is if a particular service is running and if we perform this deployment, it will actually do whatever we have mentioned in that particular deployment. If in case, for an example, if a web server is running, if I have to automatically turn off that particular web server or stop that particular web server at a certain time, I will actually create a deployment and I will run it, so that when it meets a particular time, it actually updates the current web server to a new status. So that is called as deployment. And if you have an access to create or update it, we could actually try to create a new service, new deployment, so that we could actually do some malicious activities on a running service. And also shell access in pods. So there are some commands you have to try to execute in the pods. Like Kubernetes uses a kubectl, which is a terminal tool from which we could actually try to access the Kubernetes. So while using kubectl, and we have to first check whether exec command, execute command, is working, and we have to try to access shell of the pods, and also whether we were able to get the roots shell of the pods. So that is a huge vulnerability, and we can because we can perform a lot of things if we get a root of the pod. There are n number of techniques for privilege escalations. One is like we can actually impersonate a privileged account via, as I said, if you get a secret of a privileged account user. Yeah, as mentioned here, you could use this curl command, like curl, and you should have the secret in the authorization bureau token, and then we could access the we could actually find the IP of the master node via kubectl command. There are plenty of commands. If you just search in Google, there will be plenty of kubectl commands, and out of which we could find the IP of the master node also. And after, as I said, each and every information is accessible via this API calls. API v1, and the name of the namespace is here in this particular example is kube system, and I will be able to list the if that particular secret token has an ability to read the kube system secret, I can actually get the secret of the kube system now here. So similarly, this is like an impersonating a privileged token. Okay. So these are the configurations or the configurations to check for, and there is a simple tool which you could use to check this entire RBAC configuration, but it is also helpful to check it manually try all these attacks, so that sometimes the tool may also miss those particular vulnerability. So it is always preferred to do it manually. Once you're into this Kubernetes cluster, you could actually perform these kind of attacks to elevate the privileges or totally compromise the Kubernetes service. One is like Kubernetes, it too does have versions. So there are a lot of public exploits available for each Kubernetes versions. And if your Kubernetes version is outdated, or if there is any public exploits available for that particular Kubernetes, then it is then an attacker can easily use that exploit to elevate those privileges which is inside the Kubernetes, and can compromise the API server which is in the master node. And other stuff is like this is some major things, like if that particular Kubernetes uses an AWS, we could actually try to search for all those this privileged service token. I might have told you already. And also the AWS IAM secrets. Sometimes there is a high chance of AWS IAM secrets which is actually present inside the kube system or any of the pods inside the Kubernetes cluster. what is it like getting AWS IAM secrets? It is a bingo, right? You could actually use this IAM credentials to log into the instance of the cloud, and you could do anything you want. You could write a Bitcoin miner or do everything you want to. So this thing is also should be taken care of. Like we should actually look for it also. And Kubernetes API access. Sometimes what administrators does is they provide an anonymous API access of the Kubernetes master node. So this is a huge mistake. An attacker can easily, without any, without any work, without any hard work, he could just easily access the master node and API server of the master node, and it's almost done. Because the API is, as I said, it is the heart of the master. Yes, obviously this etcd access also. We have to check if an attacker was able to actually compromise, or was able to anonymously access this etcd server. There are high chances of since I have told this is like a kind of an backup stuff, there are high chances of secrets and other sensitive information which is stored inside this ECD. So this is also one of a process of attacks which can be done in this Kubernetes cluster. And yes, obviously this is a vulnerable network config. So once we are into the Kubernetes or any pods which is inside the Kubernetes cluster, it is highly recommended that to pen test it, we do have to check with the network config, whatever stuff which is used in this Kubernetes cluster. There may be some unwanted servers, or there may be unwanted or vulnerable services, vulnerable network configs which are actually present in that pod, which we can actually use it to elevate the privileges or exploit the Kubernetes. And also, once again, vulnerable applications. If any of your applications or pods which uses vulnerable applications, which is there are high chances that actually we could try to use it. So use it to enumerate, exploit it. Yes, I guess that's all pretty much about the Kubernetes pen testing. I haven't gone so deep into it because it requires a lot of practical experience. But here is a mind map of how an attacker will be able to get into whatever I have said. It is actually shown in a diagrammatic perspective. That's it. So this it is on a right. The right side is it's totally a master, and the left side is totally a worker node. There may be chances of yes, I have actually missed it. Kube Hunter is nothing but a Kube Hunter is a tool. We use it to enumerate vulnerabilities in Kubernetes. An attacker can actually get into a Kubernetes cluster via a misconfigured K8s Kubernetes dashboard. So there are high possibilities of an attacker coming inside and attacking into a master node via this particular dashboard. And also, as I said, via an anonymous API server access, an attacker can get into the worker node. And the vulnerable applications, an attacker, this will be their pods, and he will use an Kube Hunter tool to scan the vulnerabilities, and if he finds any vulnerable web applications that he might use it to get into one particular pod, then he can actually do it via vulnerable applications. Also, there's this misconfigured Docker daemon. Dockers do have a lot of misconfigurations. Like they actually should not allow any user who is actually getting the container access as root. But if they allow a root access to a Docker, he could actually perform a number of activities. So via this misconfigured Docker daemon, anyone will be able to access a pod inside a container. So that's pretty much about the attack perspective of Kubernetes. And yes, I was talking about the tools which a pen tester should know or a pen tester should use during Kubernetes pen testing. So Kubernetes pen testing, Kubernetes RBAC audit is a tool which was created by CyberArk. It actually checks for each and every pods, each and every services inside the Kubernetes cluster, and it will actually list you what are the permissions, whether you are having the access to a write, a read, or on this particular pod or not. So everything will be actually put up in that particular result, so that it will be really easy for you to process with the attack. And also this cube bench, it can be also called as a benchmark tool, and again it was actually found by Aqua Security. That it is just a normal command where you use the cube bench run targets. What are the nodes? Like if you want to scan for, if you want to benchmark the master node, you have to just give the master node API, I mean IP. And you can also scan multiple items like master nodes, etcd policies, and everything. It will actually check for misconfigurations, access, if there is any unwanted access to it. So this also helps us to fix as well as to perform attacks. And the main thing is like the Cube Hunter tool. It is also found by Aqua Security. It's pretty much simple. Running this tool is pretty much simple. Just you have to use a Python tool to run this. So these are some of the tools which you could, and I also have a screenshot actually taken from this Aqua Security website. Like this is an output of the QBench I have told you, right? So this actually checks in this particular API server whether the allowed privilege document is set to false. Like you don't have a privilege, so that's actually a fail here. And this is some kind of it checks for what are the possibilities an attacker can actually get into it, and this can also be used by the developers to check what are the how an Kubernetes is actually misconfigured, so that they may actually fix this error before they deploy it. So I guess we are about to end the session, and these are some of the recommendations which I would actually suggest so that your Kubernetes is actually secure. So whenever you are actually deploying an image in a pod, I would really suggest you to use the latest image which is available. Because if you use an outdated image, there is a high chance of privilege escalation and a lot of kernel exploits that can be available in that particular outdated images. And also do not make your Kubernetes structure so simple. Like do not actually use n number of pods, so that it will actually get the administrator would actually, or a person who is managing the Kubernetes cluster would actually get confused, so that he may not properly implement a security configurations or those needed areas. So this is also a needed point, like maintaining a proper amount of pods is it's actually needed. And this is one of great actually best practice. Like RBAC property, configuration is one have to set properly set RBAC configurations, because that allows a majority of an attack in a Kubernetes cluster. So if that is fixed, most of the problems will be fixed. And yes, as I said, do not run an application like if you're hosting a web application, and if any user was able to compromise it, do not run that particular web application as root. Either you just create a normal low-level user in that particular image which you have used in this using in the pod or a container. Make sure that that application is running as a low-level user and not as a root. Yes, and use only a read. This is actually a best practice also. Like do not give access to users or anyone who doesn't need access to write on the file system. So it is almost better to use a read-only file system rather than actually giving a permission. So if you just use a read-only file system, no one will be able to write or update stuffs actually. And yes, for pods and containers also, when actually getting the shell access of the pods and the containers, do not allow root access for pods and containers other than the highest privileged users. So yes, this was the thing which I was talking about, the pod creation time. So even if you want to create a pod, do not allow them to actually mount the host volume, so that they may actually extend the attacks for the Docker application which is inside the host. So yes, I guess we are to the end of the presentation. Actually, there are plenty of steps to be known the Kubernetes pen testing. I just gave you the overview or the methodology how you could actually perform the testing each and every topic inside whatever I have said. It's pretty much huge with whatever I have said. you really have to need a practical experience in order to understand those things. But I guess it might be helpful for you, like to figure out how an Kubernetes attack can take place. So I guess that's it, guys. Thank you so much. And if you want any Kubernetes to be tested in your company, or anyone who needs a help with the Kubernetes pen testing, you do please contact info at SecureLayer. And we will just give a detailed description of how Kubernetes pen testing is done. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Danish. Danish, there's one question from one of the participants we have. It says, is it possible to segregate read secrets permission into different namespaces?
Actually, yes, it is possible, but you have to have the, as I was talking about, the privileged access, secret keys or the secret tokens. If that privileged secret, not even privileged, if that particular secret token has an ability to gather or get the secret token from other namespace, then yes, obviously you can do it. For example, I will give you a great example. If you were able to get a secret token of Cube System has an ability to get or access every other namespaces. So you will really have yes, it is possible actually.
Yeah, it also says like this permission always applies to the entire cluster.
Which permission, like the role-based access?
Like
no secret. No. Actually, the secret is actually for, as I said, each and every pods and each and every services will be having a secret tokens. It is not just like an entire for an entire cluster you will be having one secret account. It's not like that. If each and every separate pods and each and every separate services will be having a secret token, and with that, if you are able to get any of if some pods has that privileges in that particular secret token, then we can actually retrieve the namespaces. Contents from different namespaces.
Yeah, sure. Great. Thank you, Danish, and thank you everyone for joining this call. And it was great interacting with you all. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.